Welcome, chamber music fans. This is Michelle Schumann here. I'm the artistic director of the Austin Chamber Music Center. This is our third installment of Festival Focus, where we're talking to festival artists who are coming to the 2013 festival. I'm very happy to have Awadagin Pratt here with me. Now, you have to tell me, how do you prefer to pronounce your name?
It's a soft G. It's Awadagin.
Awadagin Pratt.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I've always wanted to know. And I have to tell you, I saw you play. It's about 20 years ago that I saw you play. You performed.
Really shouldn't say something like that.
Oh, come on. No, I'm going to tell you how wonderful you were. So, but it was at University of Calgary, and I was just starting some studies there. And I think you had just won the Naumburg.
Yeah, that was my first concert season, I think.
Yeah, so your first big tour. Did you do a lot of touring right after the Naumburg? Did that sort of set you up to do that?
Yeah, I won in May of '92, and then my first concert was in June, and then I had a lot after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first year I think there were 20 or 30 or something like that, and then it went up from there.
Well, I just remember being really amazed by your concert. I loved it, and I was so very impressionable at that age too. And I just thought that you had such fire and spark in your playing, and also your program was really fantastic. I don't know if you know either, but I think you did Opus 101. Is that possible? And the Bach Chaconne. Is that possible too?
Yeah, the Bach and Sonny Chaconne for sure. I have played 101, but I think it was maybe later. So it might have been 109 or 110.
Right.
Yeah. 101 I didn't add until a little bit later.
Yeah.
But that's nice that you remember that.
Yeah, it made a big impression on me, and so I'm really happy 20 years later to be inviting you to my festival in Austin.
Yeah,
so this is really fantastic.
Great how the world works.
Yeah, it is really funny. And your program this year looks really fantastic too, and it's really eclectic. And I know that you are pretty renowned for your eclectic programming. You have Schubert and Liszt, and I want to talk to you about the Liszt Sonata especially. But you're doing Kodai, Couperin, you're doing a piece from the Nutcracker, Tchaikovsky's The Nutcracker, and then you're doing a nocturne by Fred Hirsch. Jazz legend Fred Hirsch. How do you go about putting together your programs, and what kind of inspires you to program the things that you do? Well,
there have been a lot of different ideas over the years. I try and find some kinds of linkages, but the actual inspiration for the concept of this program in the last couple of years came from well, there are a couple, but I judged the big competition in South Africa, international competition in South Africa, about a year and a half ago now, and I was struck by how much of the playing, was just sort of bombarding the audiences and the jurors with just nonstop virtuosity of the purely cascades of notes nature, and I kind of I thought there must be. It's not only obviously I know that there's more to being a musician than that, but it's just like we're not conveying. There's not enough of the message coming through about the necessity or the importance of having some kind of musical depth and variety and other different kinds of virtuosity. And so I programmed, and then so there was that, and then which was sort of a reactionary thing. But then it was also I've been having this idea for a long time of doing a half of encores. And I remembered a concert when I was at Peabody that Burl Sinofsky, who's a really great violinist. I don't know if you know who he is, but he won. I think he won Queen Elizabeth, he won Queen Elizabeth. But was also like assistant concertmaster, associate concertmaster with Joseph Gingold at Cleveland, and really tremendous musician. And he played a recital where the first half was, there was a Brahms sonata and this and that, very serious, quote unquote, serious music. The second half was, just all encores, and I just remember how touching it was and how wonderful it was. And I loved his playing, and so I've had this idea also for a long time about doing a half of encores. So those two things sort of came together. And last year, the program was a little bit more. the second half was a little too muted. I think I found an Alcon transcription of the Beethoven, the Cavatina from the Opus 130 string quartet, which is just a straight transcription, really beautiful. And I was doing the Earl Wild Adagio from the Marcello Oboe Concerto, and it was a little bit too muted. And so I tried to kind of liven it up a bit, a little bit of a mixture of things this time around. The interesting thing that I do, though, is try and link them with improvisation. So they're two sets of four. So the first four will have improvisations in between, then a little break, and then the second four. And sometimes some work better than others. Certain nights, you just kind of take that chance. But so that's about the second half. The first half, I'm playing Liszt Sonata for a while, and so it's the last couple of seasons I've had the second half of encores, and I can't remember what I was playing. I think there's this cool piece, I don't know if you know, the Schumann Variations on a Theme of Beethoven.
Sure.
And it's from the Allegretto from the Seventh Symphony.
Yeah.
And so I was doing that, and then the Liszt Sonata, which is just kind of a handful. Yeah. But I like the idea of doing this Schubert because they're both pieces that are essentially defined by one, motive, let's say, it's a purely motivic and cyclical structure that goes through both pieces. And oddly enough, the ones in C and the other ones in B minor, they both start with this naked G, it's kind of funny. But it works as a nice pairing with the Schubert and the Liszt together.
So it's like having our dinner first, and then we'll have our dessert after intermission.
That's
right?
absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct.
Well, and I think it's interesting what you said about feeling that pianists need to show more of that kind of profound side rather than just the sort of glitz and everything. Because I wanted to talk a little bit about the Liszt Sonata because I'm a pianist as well.
Yep. And
I have to say, growing up, I was never a huge fan of Liszt. I thought it was a lot of it was too just over the top, bombastic in that sort of way.
Right.
But I am the hugest fan of the Liszt Sonata. I just think it's one of the most incredible pieces ever written, and I think because it's crafted, it's so exceptionally crafted, and it also has these elements of being profound. Well, it has all the elements really, but it holds together so fantastically, either as a large work, or even if you divide it up into kind of four movements, which can be two.
Right.
And so I love showing that part of Liszt that not everyone knows about so much.
Right. I think you're absolutely right about the craft of the composition. I think is of the highest order, and akin to one of the late Beethoven sonatas, as we discussed, because one keeps finding other deeper layers of craft the more that you dig into it, and his pursuit and struggle and interest in describing the more painful aspects of when obviously he went into the clergy, but there's a lot of philosophical kind of meditative contemplative thought that has to go into making those kind of decisions, and it's that those kind of existential questions are manifest in the sonata, and there's some searingly beautiful and poignant and kind of pathetic moments in the piece. So it's a real epic journey of the human condition.
Yeah, and I think it goes outside of itself in a way as well. Like a lot of piano pieces can be really just for piano, and this is a pianistic piece, obviously as well. But this, I think, it's really a tone poem, and it follows the same structure as symphonic tone poems. So I think it's Liszt's way of kind of experimenting with the piano sonata to make it something bigger that then really, I think, had a huge impact on Strauss tone poems and that sort of thing. So I just think that I'm so excited for you to be playing it. It's really one of my favorite pieces.
And I like the Schubert relationship as well, because he did his own arrangement of the Wanderer, And I think, again, that kind of cyclical thing,
exactly.
Obviously had an impact from Schubert to him.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a great program, and I think people are really excited to hear it as well. Now, you got diplomas in violin violin conducting and piano.
Yeah.
So how do, and you are primarily a pianist.
That's right.
How did these other disciplines kind of inform your piano playing?
Well, I've always thought that was kind of an interesting question because I have no idea what it's like to be a pianist who doesn't play the violin, or to be a pianist who doesn't, who's not a conductor. I think that there was always my first engagement with music was mostly through orchestral music. My parents listened to mostly orchestral music, not just kind of like piano music, and so I think I always have had, at least at the beginning, that kind of sound in my ear. And then certainly being a violinist, searching for ways of I wouldn't say mimicking, but how to develop a line the same way that I might on the violin, where it's a little bit more easy to do so. I think that's always been part of something that's in my ear, that when I'm playing the piano that I'm listening for, striving for. I think that, it's funny because, I did a little bit of conducting recently, and it seems like I'll be doing a little bit more again. And conducting is the thing that really demands, I think, places the greatest demands on anyone as a musician, even though you're not making a sound. But all of the analysis and understanding that's necessary. It's not only necessary for me to know it. I have to convey it, find the most efficient ways of conveying what I think are the salient points to the orchestra. When you go from studying a conducting score to then just playing the piano, it's funny how much simpler piano playing seems by comparison. But I think the having had the study of analysis and structural, harmonic, etc. I think informs my piano playing to a great deal, because it's a when you're in school you learn theory and harmony, all this stuff, and it's a challenge that I face now as a professor as well, because I will be teaching freshmen who are playing Bach Preludes and Fugues or Beethoven sonatas, whatever it is, and have varying levels of understanding of counterpoint, of harmony, so forth. So those things come up later in the theory curriculum, right? So then, by the time that I was very lucky to have a theory professor who felt it was important to integrate or guide the student to integrate this information, that it wasn't just for having the information, that it's useful for making interpretive decisions.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest problems, is that these disciplines are so isolated that when students learn theory, they just learn it on paper and don't quite understand how it might apply. And it can be, and even things like sight singing, like how does sight singing help piano playing, for instance, and it's really important to integrate that. In many ways.
And so I think being a conductor, where that's just part of the discipline, is what chordus is, and that has helped at least sustain that in my my piano playing and so forth. So they all sort of cross-pollinate is the answer. It's the short answer.
Well, and I imagine just the idea of color. I think the first time I learned that the piano didn't have to sound like a piano was really mesmerizing. And actually, I think it was, I heard a performance, and I think it was of Mendelssohn G minor, the piano concerto. And the middle movement sounded like angels to me, and I was like 12 years old or something like that. And I was just like, wow, if the piano doesn't have to sound like a piano, then that's an amazing thing. And we only learn that if we have those other colors in our head.
In our
in our ear. so I imagine the idea of conducting really brings that out, and even with with piano, to look at a piano score, it's funny because when you said looking just at a piano score, I think that it would be so much more complicated looking at a conducting score,
right.
Of course,
right.
And but to be able to bring those orchestral colors, I think, to the piano, it's like what we were saying about the Liszt Sonata almost being an orchestral piece. I think that we can do that so often, and it's so great for audiences to be able to hear that as well. I think with pianists, some audiences don't often always know why one pianist is better than another pianist, but I think all of those things come into play. And the listening that goes into great pianism, it's sort of on the 95th or 99th percentile of listening. And not everyone can discern the differences, but I think those are the things that they hear that they're not quite sure how to pinpoint. But it's color that really makes a difference in what people find spectacular versus, fine playing.
Yeah, it's I've always had this notion that people they can mistake bad playing for good playing, because on some level, so that's something I can't do, and so that's something good about that. But given a choice in a comparison between extraordinary playing and bad playing, or extraordinary playing and good playing, they can tell the difference.
Yeah,
and they will rarely listen to good playing and think it's bad.
Yeah, but they often can't.
And they won't be able to
explain
necessarily
it.
quantify.
Right. There's just something special, and it's sort of in those realms that is really exceptional to be able to hear. Now you play a lot of chamber music yourself as well. In fact, did you just record a CD with Zwiel Bailey?
Yeah, it was Zwiel Bailey. Yeah, we did a Brahms works for cello and piano.
Yeah, great. And you enjoy playing chamber music. Is that a big part of what you do as well?
Well, it's when I was in school, I think I played more chamber music than anything else, and of course I was playing on the violin and the piano, and there were years when I was in two groups on each instrument doing really kind of goofy things like that, and obviously also doing a ton of accompanying stuff, singers and other instruments when I was through school, and then as my career started, obviously I was playing a lot of solo repertoire, and then playing chamber music at festivals, and so I did that, and then I had for about 10 or 12 years was the artistic director of a chamber music festival in Pennsylvania. It was a Next Generation Festival, and so that was always really gratifying because I could work with people that I wanted to work with, and I have done the whole sort of get together and the festival thing. You just come together with people you either know or you don't know, and you throw it together in a couple of days and whatever. And there's something that's great energy about that as well. But I kind of prefer to sort of get in it a little bit more deeply, and so it sort of comes and goes. It's been that festival ended, and I played with Zwiel quite a bit. I was up at his festival last year in Sitka, Alaska, and had some really nice collaborations up there. I've worked on and off over the years with the Daedalus Quartet, regularly in Cypress Quartet, Moreau Quartet, of course. We played together, and I was sorry that couldn't work out this time. So my festival, but at any rate, I love chamber music.
Yeah. Well, I was a bit bummed that you couldn't come play with the Miros too, but then I was like, well, you're such an amazing pianist, in your own right, so it wasn't hard to figure out a way to get you to do a solo recital. Well,
I appreciate that.
And actually, this opened up the opportunity. I'm going to be playing with the Miros, and so instead I'll be doing Elgar with them, which will be a lot of fun. I couldn't decide if I was going to play during the festival this year because I just had a baby 2 months ago, and I understand did you just have a baby recently as well?
Yeah, it's 6 weeks ago.
Oh wow, mine is 8 weeks old. So
what was like April 4, 5, 6? Or?
April 4th, and she was born.
I see. We were April 20th.
Oh wow, yeah.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to you. Do you have a little boy or a little girl?
A little boy.
Is this your first?
It is our first. I have an older son.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. That's fantastic. How is that? Is that digging into your practice time right now, or you surviving?
Yeah, it's funny. It's sort of not too much. And a couple of weeks ago, I just had a Rhapsody in Blue with the Indianapolis Symphony last weekend, and there was a day where he was just inconsolable and just, and finally it's like, well, I'll just bring him down here and put him, we'll try something, because had him with me at the piano, often, because he heard a lot of music when he was in the womb, and so,
Sure.
I started playing a little bit, and then I was like, well, he seems calm, and I haven't practiced today, so I just put him in his kind of little crib thing, by the piano. I just put him in there, and I started practicing Rhapsody, and 3 minutes into it, he was just knocked out. I was like, I played Rhapsody boringly enough for him to fall asleep, but I actually got a little run through in which I wasn't counting on that day. So, every day is a new thing. So.
Yeah, I also strap my daughter. Usually, it's at the end of the day. If nothing else works, if I strap her up into the baby Bjorn and sit down at the piano and play a Mozart concerto, that always does it. And she's sort of out, and it works.
I've not done the baby Bjorn at the piano. I'll have to try that.
It's not, it's not great. Obviously,
can't be completely ideal.
You have to calm down a little bit, but it's worth it to just kind of move the hands a little bit and console the baby. Cool. So that's great. We'll have many stories, I'm sure, when you come.
Yeah, absolutely. So Elgar, is that something you've played before?
I have. I've played it a couple times before, and
cool.
it's
I've never played it.
It's a little weird. It's a little different. Yeah. But there's some incredibly beautiful moments. It's just that language, that sort of English harmonic language. I really, really love, and there's just some really exceptional moments. You should check it out.
I've heard it. It always seemed to be like a piece that would require a lot of. You gotta make sure the glue's in the right places.
Yes.
Just structurally.
Yeah, because it is a little bit all over the place. So you have to have a firm idea of what you want to do with it, certainly. So, but it's a lot of fun. So now we have the best of both worlds. We'll have the Miros with a quintet, and we'll have you in the solo recital. So
that's great. Thanks. I'm happy it's going to work out.
Well, we're all very, very excited, and thank you so much for joining us for this interview, and we're really looking forward to it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, you take care, and we'll see you in, I think it's 8 weeks or something like that.
About a month, a couple months. What is it? It's
July
19th, right?
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
All right. You take care. Have a good night.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.